Welcome back to New Day Northwest. You know, many of the medical advancements we have today, like gene editing and immunotherapies, are thanks to the vision of one man, Dr. E. Donald Thomas. Now a new book called Living Medicine by Fred Hutch Dr. Fred Appelbaum takes a look back at the life of Dr. Thomas and his life-saving contributions to modern medicine. Author Fred Appelbaum is here with me now. Thank you for being here. Who was Dr. Don Thomas and what was your connection with him?
Don was the guy that won the Nobel Prize for developing marrow transplantation. Early on, I read one of his first papers and I was just entranced by it. And so I started working a little bit in the field, and then way back in the mid-70s, Don read a couple of my papers, invited me to come out to Seattle, and
oh my goodness.
I've been here for 45 years, so working with Don.
What an honor, because
yeah.
Truly, we were speaking about this before we came to air, and I just have you kind of explain what a bone marrow transplant does, because I don't know that everyone understands kind of how impactful that is on a person's ability to fight off a disease.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know what bone marrow does, but bone marrow, you know, it's that sort of gelatinous material inside of, you had a cooking show, so ossobuco, you know, the good stuff that tastes real well inside. Well, that actually is the organ that makes all of your blood, your red cells, your white cells, and your platelets, and it makes your whole immune system. So when we do a bone marrow transplant, what we're doing is we're getting rid of a patient's diseased bone marrow, either because it's leukemic or it isn't working right, it's immune deficient, and we're giving that patient a whole new bone marrow, a whole new immune system, a whole new blood forming system. So that's what a bone marrow transplant is all about.
And that's why it's so incredible and life-saving, and we don't talk about its importance enough, but his inspiration for bone marrow transplantation came from an unlikely place, did it not?
It did. I mean, it's sort of ironic. Marrow transplantation is this curative therapy, but actually it derived from a huge amount of deaths due to the nuclear bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. When those explosions happened, of course, tens of thousands of people were killed by the blasts.
Right.
But it's estimated 30 to 40,000 people were killed by radiation poisoning. What happened was that the radiation from the bomb destroyed the victim's bone marrow, and they died with bleeding and infection. Well, shortly after the war, people trying to figure out what was going on and also thinking that there could be another nuclear bomb, found out that after radiation, if you gave the victim new bone marrow from a donor, they could recover. And so Don said, well, if you can if you see destruction of a normal bone marrow and it can be replaced, shouldn't you be able to destroy an abnormal bone marrow and replace it with a normal bone marrow? And that's where bone marrow transplantation had its derivation.
And genius, because now when we talk about things like immunotherapy, as I was asking Fred, how does that translate to this? But that is that same pathway, how you decided and realized, immunotherapy, which is sending your own immune system to attack itself after it's been re-engineered, correct?
Exactly. So one of the early findings of bone marrow transplantation, which was a surprise to a lot of people, is that we could find that it was actually the new immune system from the donor that was seeing the leukemia in the patient and attacking it and getting rid of it. And once that observation was made, then what people tried to do was, instead of relying on the donor's bone marrow, could you take the patient's own immune system, engineer it to attack the leukemia? And that's really the new revolution in cell therapy that's going on.
I mean, it's so exciting, my friends. I can't even tell you how amazing it is and how lucky we are that we have Hutch right in our backyard. And I'm so excited about Living Medicine because it shares these inner workings of medical science. And just talking to you, I know it shares it in a way that is easily approachable. But it includes places like Fred Hutch and really does give the credit to the research done in Seattle. Why is it so important for us to understand, you know, the reality of medical research, the ups and downs of these things?
Well, first of all, you know, Don had this idea. Everyone thought it was impossible, and then now 100,000 transplants are done worldwide. So there's been enormous progress. We now have cures in leukemia where every patient used to die with those diseases. We have cures in sickle cell anemia that are 95% with marrow transplantation, and they're going to get better and better. But one of the problems is that it's a slow process, and people think, well, something didn't work, therefore we should give up. It's one step at a time, and it can only be done through research, and research takes time, it takes effort, and it takes resources to get it done.
Really?
And so that's why places like the Hutch exist.
Thank goodness they do, and some of the amazing life resources there. I know that a lot of immunotherapy can actually extend out to not just cancer, but viruses as well, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, the reason that people, for example, HIV, the first patient ever cured of HIV was with a bone marrow transplant by giving the patient a new immune system that the virus couldn't attack. The immune system is an incredibly complicated but also wonderful thing.
Yes.
And marrow transplantation can cure autoimmune diseases like scleroderma. It can cure a whole bevy of different diseases of the immune system, including immune deficiencies where you're not able to fight viruses adequately.
It's just amazing, all the all the advances we've made so that one day maybe not going under radiation, not chemotherapy, maybe just having these life-saving treatments, all because of the work you do over at the Hutch. So thank you so much for that. So excited for everyone to read this new book because it is just going to help you all understand just how amazing it is. So thank you so much for your time here today.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.